It's the Lekker Rugby Pod, only on Megaphone Rugby.
Welcome to the Lekker Rugby Pod. A very special day today. Rugby has its superstars, and so does big law firms. Marco Masotti is a senior New York City shareholder at a super firm, Paul Weiss, an expert lawyer in private equity deals with a lofty band one of the prestigious Chambers of UK. That's two rungs above me, everyone. Built on his extraordinary reach in the fund formation space. He's named as the deal maker of the year by the American Lawyer for his role in the Chelsea Football Club deal, has also led transactions in the NBA, the MLB, and the NFL, and for some reason wanted to dive into rugby. He's part of that brilliant diaspora who never forgets where they come from. A son of South Africa, we know him as the controlling partner of the Sharks, a lawyer buying a Sharks club. It just writes itself. But he is most proud of being the son of Vinio and Z Masotti of Amanzimtoti Beach, South Africa. Marco, welcome to the Lekker Rugby Pod.
Thanks, Harry. Thanks for having me on. Look forward to the discussion.
Yeah, when the news hit that you had done this thing, I thought, what are you doing, Mark? I wanted to intervene and save you. We hear so many stories about rugby clubs upside down. So just kind of take us to the story of how this even came about, and now why you're knee deep in the world of rugby club ownership.
It wasn't something that I thought I wanted to do. So it wasn't part of a strategic plan. It happened organically. And it actually goes back to when I first joined Paul Weiss. Someone by the name of Nelson Mandela came to Paul Weiss to meet with my mentor, Ted Sorensen, who was a corporate partner at the firm. And Ted set up something called the South Africa Free Elections Fund. And the first chair of that fund was someone by the name of Vincent May, a private equity investor in New York, an expat South African. I built a relationship with Vincent. As you may know, Vincent became Siya Kolisi's mentor. And when a very close friend of mine who was on the Stormers board reached out to me knowing that I knew some private equity investors who invest in sport, reached out to me about possibly investing in South African rugby. I looked at the relationships that I had. I spoke to Vincent about it, and we put together a little co-investment vehicle for some of our friends. I looked at my life. I love the sport. I love media and entertainment. I wanted to feel more connected to South Africa. I realized rugby players have great values and are potential leaders in the business community in South Africa, possibly even in government one day. And so it all came together, and it was actually something very, very easy to do, thinking about the relationships that I had, my past, and also what I want to do with the next phase of my life.
Yeah, it's
Sorry,
a fantastic.
that was very long-winded, but.
No, there's so many threads there, though. I remember I was jam-packed in the final, the World Cup 2023 in Paris, and we're all jam-packed trying to get a jambon sandwich, take a leak, and get a beer before we start again. And everyone's, squished together. And you're like, hey, but where you from? And they're all like, Toronto. Well, really from Bloemfontein. Or Sydney. But actually, and it was that idea of it never leaves you. You want to find your way back. And what could you do to find a way back that was meaningful? So, but
rugby is a great vehicle for that. And a lot of expat South Africans use rugby as a way of, it's a great story for South Africa of feeling connected to South Africa. And it's the way I taught my son about South Africa. And I go and I was there with him, watching that final.
It's a way, it's expertise personified. I rock up in a place like Mexico or Colombia, and I'm going to work with a rugby club just by saying, from Cape Town originally, I'm good. The expertise is assumed, maybe wrongfully, but when you look at this now, knowing all you know now, and all the abuse you'll take, and all the false criticism, and all the highs and the lows, the Challenge Cup, and looking back on now, obviously, you don't seem to take yourself too seriously. I mean, online you don't. You have some fun. What's been surprising? What's been really great? And what's been, tougher in doing this role?
That's hard to. First, I don't take myself seriously. And I think we need to have a lot more fun when it comes to rugby. it's a sport that's stuck in a little bit of conservatism, and that has been a little surprising to me. You always go, if you get a little bit out there,
Yeah.
someone is
Yeah.
dialing you back, that's not very sportsman-like. That's not in
Yeah.
accordance with the values of the sport. But to get it out there, to the next generation of fan, and the kids are different. We need to stick with the values of the sport, which are absolutely amazing. And I think in a future world, you can really sell that to the new consumer of the sport. But at the same time, we need to have a lot more fun. Look,
Yeah,
that's who I
exactly.
am. When you're a South African from a Manson Toady, that's who you are. I mean, I still feel like, when I'm with my high school friends in South Africa, I'm that person.
Yeah.
17-year-old boy, fishing along the Manson Toady River. So you can't. I haven't changed in that respect, but we gotta make the sport more fun, more entertaining, and not take ourselves so seriously.
Yeah, for sure. And even in the sports you've been across, football, obviously basketball, there's so much banter written in. And obviously, South Africans, we grow up just shit talking each other. I mean, it's literally our language, our lingo, it's our expression is almost sarcasm from the day starts to the day ends. I found this very bizarre when I was talking to some people from Munster, and there was a guy getting on there and saying, "This is terrible, this wink." And the guy talking was, an eye gouger. I mean, it's just, we have a hard time with characters. Obviously,
But
you've
by
done
the
a
way,
lot.
that's what I want. I want a
Yeah,
few South African guys from different backgrounds sitting on a couch. I will watch that and
yeah,
giving each other grief about
exactly.
the teams and who they want, and doing it in a very Barstool Sports way. Okay,
That's it.
because that's what the kids want to see. It's okay.
Yeah, and it's got to be with cheek. The things I said on the field, though, to my opponents. There was one time I was saying something, even the ref started laughing and stopped the game, and it was just funny. Terribly rude, by the way. But, earliest rugby memories for you. You say it's your favorite sport. What do you love about it, particularly as an actual sport to watch and absorb?
I mean, it's that moment where South Africa are defending the goal line against England in the 2019 World Cup,
Yes,
and you can't even breathe. It is like your body's twitching in your seat, watching our guys, you know, defending that line. I mean,
exactly.
that's what I love. It's very unexplainable. But my first memory was, sitting in, the last row of Kings Park in 1976. Someone at work had given my Italian father 2 tickets to the All Black Springbok test, and just falling in love. Just falling in love with the experience, just falling in love with the toughness of the sport. Um, I'd go home and think about running angles in my head,
Yeah.
about how to do it differently. I love the strategy of it. I love the toughness of it. I love those moments of defending the goal line. I love the scrum.
It's a
Think about
beautiful
the
thing.
scrum.
Yeah.
8 guys on 8 guys. I mean, it's not.
Yeah.
It's like it's not tightrope in school. Remember that, you know, that sport, but it's 8 people who have to be totally in sync, pushing against another 8 people. Man, it's fantastic.
Exactly. Those old rugby drills where it's in a box, 5 by 5,
Yeah,
one man, nowhere to hide, no, you're going to squeal. Maro Itoje carrying in that extraordinary sequence you just referred to and literally giving up in the end and saying, I don't want to carry anymore. Someone else, please. Courtney Law is the only one willing to carry into that, threshing machine. You had to teach your father maybe a bit about rugby. So you and I have some parallels. My dad, nuclear scientist guy from New York, moving over. And I was always telling him how it was working. He was invited
yeah,
to the rugby brides with the dads, and I had to explain to him what a ruck was all about. So you're doing the same thing now. You did the same thing with your dad?
I did. Yeah, I did. Yeah, he was from Italy, so rugby was new for him too. We discovered it together, and he learned to love it. But yes, I had to
That's awesome.
explain it to
Uh,
him.
So a day in Durban, as I was able to experience last year for the Irish debacle with Frawley with that damn drop goal that slid off his foot and
Yeah,
went over. But the
yeah.
vibe, I would compare that with anything. And I've been, recently over to Sydney, to Dublin, to London. Just an amazing day. Everyone obviously needs to get the smells, the sights, the sounds. You're gonna run into a lot of Xbox, guys that are just having they're in the tailgate braaiing. What's the challenge of putting that together, appealing to different generations? Someone doesn't like a DJ like MV, my friend, the Don Quixote that's always protesting about the DJ. And then you have guys that just come for the vibe. How do you put all that together in a match day experience?
Look, you have to look. We're appealing to most of the people. Someone is always going to complain because someone, especially in South Africa, especially in Durban, sort of has this perception that it was better in the past.
Yeah.
Okay. And when you look at what's going on at the Shark Tank, something very special is brewing there. The demographic, you'll see all of South Africa there. You'll see a lot of children. We are creating future generations of Sharks fans, and they're really turning out. And they're turning out, not only for Siya Kolisi and Eben Etzebeth and the younger players coming through, but also for being together, the match day experience, and the product that we're delivering for them. This past 12 months has been exceptional for the franchise.
Yeah,
Attendance has increased 57%.
Right.
We've sold 78% more tickets than in the past. Our commercial relationships are the highest of any sporting franchise in South Africa. It's been an incredible period and I'm not talking about the rugby part, winning the Challenge Cup, the Currie Cup, the SA Shield, but commercially, on the ground, the management team there have done a great job, and it's been the best year of that, since we invested in the franchise. I regard the first period of a little bit of a rescue mission. You're dealing with COVID, you're dealing with massive losses, you're trying to effectively rebuild the franchise, so you're not having the struggles of some of the other franchises in South Africa, like the Cheetahs or the Pumas. So we needed to rebuild it, in a way that was reflective of the brand. And I think we're really starting to find our feet now.
There's a great quote by Mark Cuban, the former owner of the Dallas Mavericks. He sold out, but he said, there's about 20 reasons why people come to spend a night in the AAC arena. And one of them is basketball. It's not five of the reasons of 20. And so there's amenities, there's a vibe, there's a bar, there's entertainment in the middle. And I think embracing that, you look at Super Rugby rushing the games, they broke. Look at the Premiership, going out, all attack, they're broke. Top 14 is a day. If you go to Claremont and you spend the day on a buffet and you go to the game, it's forever. And I think the idea of, a rock concert, like you guys have been doing, and beyond that, just, reaching the community. I know you guys do well by your players, teaching them financial stuff. You're talking to them about, handling mental health. Talk to me about how this, it feels more holistic than just buying a club and looking at wins and losses.
No, it's definitely the case. Because look, when you take care of the players, you're taking care of your franchise. It's self-fulfilling. I still don't think we're there, and we have a lot of work to do. Right? This is a process. These players are different, just like the young lawyers in my law firm are different, and we need to approach them with different strategies. We need to take care of their mental health needs and everything that they experience in the world. And it's no different with the rugby players. When I came and I had this idea of giving each of them a foreign mentor and a local mentor, some of those relationships have worked, some have not, but we're trying things. When I'm with the players, especially some of the senior players, what is your 3-year plan? What comes next? What are you going to do? You want to talk about it?
You mean post rugby?
Yeah. Yes. It's massively important. Like part of part of the people that I've brought to the Sharks, some of the foreigners are in different lines of business. We've got a great group of local business people, generic pharmaceuticals, apparel, real estate, packaging. And I'll say to the players, you've got it there. You've got it there. Go have a cup of coffee,
Right.
formulate a plan. But, we can't leave it until the day you retire. But when you do that, and we're in the process of this, we know we're near successful enough at this. But when you take care of the players, just like we have to take care of them in the gym and nutrition, but you take care of all of the things around them. So you're taking care of them holistically in their lives. That's how you're taking care of your franchise.
Yeah, and obviously it feels like, I know we came in, MVM acquired the Sharks. We heard about the sort of global brand aspect, and the scale between rugby and some of these other mega sports is so out of whack still. But, what does that mean to build a global brand for the Sharks? Like, in what way does that translate into more commercialism? And can you invent more commercial assets? I mean, is it possible to sort of expand on the universe, or is it just about selling jerseys and tickets?
No, it's possible. I mean, your brand is everything. We can't, what I'm saying by that, and MVM is Marco V Masotti and friends. What I'm saying by that, we have to think big. When I invested, there was a little bit of a feeling of hopelessness in Durban and at the club, and my job is not to run the Sharks. I'm an investor. I'm a little bit of a benefactor now. What I'm doing is we still have losses like all rugby clubs, and I'm writing checks. Okay, so it's not purely an investment. My role is to formulate a plan to challenge people on the ground. Is this the best in class? To help them think, big. What's the plan? What are we doing? As opposed to running it and telling a coach, this player's good, this one's not. That's not what a benefactor or an investor does. I've had to think about my role, very, very carefully. So it's more about holding them to a plan that's best in class. But I don't think we can just be, a team in Durban. I think we've got fans all around the world. The Sharks are the biggest brand in South Africa. We've got the second largest social media following to Toulouse, which is the largest of any rugby club in the world. And so it's important we now play in Europe. It's important we be in Europe. Ideally, what we're working towards is also developing, European sponsorship, which can move the needle when you pay it in euros or pounds. So it's important that we take the brand there. And, I live in New York, and the 2031 World Cup will be in the United States. And the hope is in the build up to that, we bring the team here every now and then. We have a little bit of a presence. We have 2 coaches from our academy coming over next week to run a few, they're running an academy program in Chicago, in Washington, in New York. It's just to little by little, build our presence and build our brand here.
Yeah, it's such an opportunity too, because I think there's a hunger for different sports. People love to attach to a different thing. It's not like the old days where there were just a few sports. The ability for some place like the UFC or online gaming, esports, they can explode, and it's mostly built on this idea of social media assets. Talk to me about how that was driven, because obviously it seemed very intentional to me that your branding officer reaches out to me one day and says, come over to the stoop and we're going to have a day. And I walk up there and there's Tim Clark in there. And the idea of bringing people from around the world with South African roots, South African connections. Was that something that you guys sat down to do?
Yeah, it was something that I felt strongly about. Tim Clark is from Umkomaas. And he's a Sharks fan, and he lives here. And you know what? He wants that. We're helping him as much as he's helping, our club. He wants a South African franchise, a business in South Africa reaching out and saying, you are still part of us.
Mhm.
You're still part of us. But look, what we're trying to do is use other mediums to expand our brand, which we're just tapping the surface of doing that. We now play in Europe. I only did this because we were playing in Europe. If we were
Mm.
still in Super Rugby, you know, New Zealanders on the other side of the world, it would not have worked. Europe is where the action is, where the money is in the sport, and where there's an opportunity to grow our brand. So we did it because because the South African franchises were at that point planning to invest in Europe.
It does my head in because you watch in these championship cups, but also just the French leagues, they're filling stadiums. They right size their stadiums, so they don't try to build a 85,000 seater for 15,000 people, but they fill up. There's no shortage of new fans, dialed on fans, and then World Rugby sometimes studies the wrong regions. I would study where it's working, and I would focus all my energy on who loves me instead of focus on rugby league types in Australia that think it's too slow. There's definitely places where it's working. My other worry is we sometimes act like we flush with money when we broke. So dropping 25 million a year onto sevens, which is teaching people to watch a different code. I don't know. It's like pickleball. I don't know if tennis pushes pickleball. So is there an ability for South Africa to have a seat at the table, be there, using the Champions Cup and the Challenge Cup as the entree, to have more of a say and have the places where things are working, be able to drive this game? Or is it always going to be the naysayers and the people who are looking at the bad old days?
Look, you'll have the people looking at the good old days or bad old days. There's no doubt about it. But I think what is going on in rugby? I mean, if just take South Africa as an example, it's very, very significant over the last few years. You've now got a great ownership group at the Bulls, led by Rupert, and an iconic South African who is investing in the sport, massively valuable. Okay, you now have a good ownership group at the Stormers, led by the LaRue family, investing in the franchise. It's their team, care about it. You've got a great ownership group at the Sharks. I think the Lions are going to have to think about, their business. They're probably falling behind a little, but you've got now private owners and business people who are talking about and who are collaborating more. When I get on Zooms with them, I say, because I'm oriented to what takes place in the NFL, we have to collaborate as much as we compete. And it's important. We've got to do things together, plan different regions together. But, if we are together, we will get this right.
Yeah, exactly. NFL will convene rules committees of owners because they are selling something and they don't want to do some crazy rule change that's going to torpedo the franchises. If they're going to go to Monterrey, Mexico and expand there, they're going to talk to everyone and say, do you like that? Do you want to play in Munich? Do you want to play in London? So is there an ability?
So my point is, and I'm going to bring some of these owners together in November around one of the tests, just spend the afternoon together, get to know, talk about a way forward. But, we need to, because you've got change in ownerships and it's happened in the Premiership, you've got some good owners in the top 14 in France, that's going to drive it. It's happened in other sports. It sort of happened in the NBA in the 1950s. But I think because, we need certainty in our business, for the business models to work. And, the owners will drive change in the sport.
Let's get in the game. Let's get in the game. It's always serious. So what does my head in also is a bit, the Sharks year on year, and we can talk about how you review performance. I'm sure you're not doing, minute, granular. It's more at the top end, but you look at the year on year from 14th to 3rd, win the Shield instead of bottom of the Shield, get to a semifinal, points differential, which is to me always the most important thing, minus 88 to plus whatever it was. And then you hear the sort of like criticism going, well, it's not enough. It should be sooner. That is a fanatic's prerogative, of course, to say, I want more quicker. This is normal. Every fan's like that. But looking from what you look at, are you looking in 3-year increments, 5-year increments? How do you sort of view and review your coaching staff and the people that are in place?
Look, we're in the middle of it now, right? We're in the middle of it now. I'm speaking to the team on the ground later in the week. You have to do a deep dive into a season after the season, talk about what we did well. Are there tweaks we should be making? So we're in the middle of it. I'm incredibly happy with the season. I'll say it at the outset. And look, we probably won games we shouldn't have. We lost games that we shouldn't have. But on the whole, I saw a lot of pride in fighting for that jersey. There's a great culture in the team and camaraderie. The young players coming through. I'm disappointed, like every fan. We really in the back end of the season, we in the exit game, Eben got injured. Then the Stormers game, we lost to serious injuries, Andre and Fassi. And in the back end of the season, we lacked a little bit of cohesion. We really didn't click like we did in the build-up to the Challenge Cup the season before. But, we had at some point about 25% of our squad and people in chess positions, key positions, injured.
Yeah.
And the team managed our way through it with a lot of adversity. We don't have the type of depth and we, it's something that we need to deal with Saru on that you would expect. And so you really can, where we were at a point in the season, we really decided to focus on the URC versus trying to win the Challenge Cup again. And the coaching team had to make hard decisions relating to player personnel and I supported what they decided to do. But on the whole, you pointed out, it is, I always say to the players, I love you, and it's about process, not about outcome. When you get the process right, you get a lot of good outcome. But when you look at the outcome of this season, versus where we were a season ago, I'm very happy with where our business is right now, both commercially, squad, and what I'm seeing on the field.
There's some long processes already in play. For example, in Leinster, we're talking about having 12 British and Irish Lions, but that's just part of it. IRFU has been sponsoring or taking centralized contracts for 10 or more of their players to the tune of where they're effectively having a 15 million euro payroll. So not speaking to that issue, not whinging about it either. I'm just saying
let me also say, sorry for interrupting you, but there's this narrative in South African rugby that we are the big spending franchise. As the person who's writing some checks, we are not. In fact, the Bulls, Sharks, and Stormers are in the same zip code. I suspect next year with Polly joining, Sofontaine joining, some of the acquisitions, they may be a little higher. But we have a salary cap, and we're all in the same zip code. We're not spending more money. You can make an argument about how we're allocating it, top to bottom, and those are all good discussions. But we're not Real Madrid.
Yes, that's fair. What is the review process like? Is it are you the sole reviewer? Is there a panel, and is it got rugby people, money people? What's also all about?
Yeah, I will say on so the review process, we've got a good data person there, but our CEO is Sean Bryans. I think you've met Sean, and he's doing a wonderful job. So he sits down with the coaching staff. They go through the data, and they're going to come back and report. And the people I talk to, even though I'm the biggest shareholder, I'm the control person of the Sharks. I'm a very deliberative person, so I speak a lot to Vincent May. I speak to Stephen Sard, who's on the ground, has been around the franchise for a very long time. And I speak to my close friend, Dominique Sylvester, the controlling owner of Saracens, who's been invested in the sport for a long time, and a group of other people. And so I'm a little bit in the middle of doing this. If you catch me in about 2 weeks' time, I'll be done with some of those conversations and how we go forward. But I think, we lost in a semi-final. It's probably a game we should have won when you look at the raw data. We're north of 60% territory possession. But to get to that cup, we need to improve in a lot of areas, on the field, off the field. It's the little things. I will say a place that I'm enormously happy with, and I'm having dinner with the two coaches of our academy on Friday night. They'll be here visiting New York for these camps that I spoke earlier about. But our academy has been totally revamped, and it's very exciting to see. And our junior structures, in terms of young coaches, players coming in, a very, very exciting part of the franchise. My sense for a few years there was a little bit neglected, and that's going to hold the franchise in good stead going forward.
You might also be the franchise best at getting transformation right. Is that a focus? Is that something intentional, or did it just happen?
It's definitely important, an important focus, and I speak about it a lot. Diversity, because it's the way to win in South Africa. When you're creating opportunities for the talent all across the country, and we get a lot of players from the Eastern Cape. That is how you win. That's what we've seen. Weapon. That's what we've seen at the Springbok level. It's a hidden weapon, and people bring their cultural differences in a way, to the game. You got your players who have grown up in a very sort of structured, hierarchical way. It's almost they're the Spaniards who hit the tennis ball for 8 hours, and then you got the players who grew up in other parts of the country on the side of the field without organized coaching, and they're the John McEnroes. They've tried other sporting codes. They bring creativity and flair to it, and so that's a little bit of, I think, what we've struggled with a little, and it's in the context of South Africa, and I've seen it. There are stark cultural differences, and so you really need, people who understand that and navigate that, and in some respects teach these kids in a different way.
It's almost unbeatable when it comes together. I'll go back to 2019. You have Marco Marx delivering a huge hit on Henry Slade. Ball jars loose. Lucanio arm, quick thinking, funnels it to Pieter-Steph du Toit. Pieter-Steph finds with the left-hand pass perfectly Colby in space. These four boys would never have played together in the same fields when they were 5 or 6, but here they are in a boom, 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 and it's magic, and then everyone's hugging at the end. So moving to some of your naysayers, because we don't want to have a softball interview with you, Marco, but our friend Rian Ringo Low from Alberton, he says, ask Masotti how he sleeps at night, having decimated my Lions. How does he look in the mirror? How does he look his kids in the eyes without feeling shame?
I have a good night's sleep. We are in a market, and you should be happy, that I'm creating an opportunity for this great talent to be part of our Sharks family. And Rian, you're welcome to become a Sharks fan as well. I will sleep even better if you do. But don't point the finger at me. Point the finger at the franchise. That franchise needs a little bit of help. I think at the ownership level, it needs a bit of help. That stadium is a little bit of an albatross for them. Look, we have stadium issues as well. We have an aging stadium. It's too big. We need to figure out something. But the Lions, are a storied franchise. They'll be back. We had very competitive games. We got beaten by them once, and we narrowly beat them this season. They will be back, but they do, out of the 4 major franchises, they do have issues. And by the way, I'm happy to be helpful. I'm happy to be helpful. Because if as I said, you got to collaborate more than you compete, and they need to understand that. You know, early in the week, I had a call with Franz Stein, you know, from the Cheetahs, and I had on the line the owners of the Old Glory rugby team to make that introduction, because the Cheetahs are trying to find other ways of playing. They have a competition where perhaps a US team can join. We're all in this together, you know, and we need to help the other franchises.
On stadium size, it is interesting. You go to Twickenham in London, and then right across the street there's the Stoop. Murrayfield has the Hive, and it's really nice because, you know, depending on how you want to flex for an event, a big game, you can go big, you can go 20,000, 18,000. Is there an ability to do something along those lines for the Lions? Because I actually think that's at the crux of the whole issue, is going to Ellis Park for certain games, fine. Other games, it just seems like it's not fit for purpose.
Yeah. They need to find, yes, I'm with you on that. I will say we have that as a little bit of an issue as well. You know, I'd like to find a solution with the city, but you know, playing in a 20,000 person stadium. Look, our numbers are going up and up. On average, we 15 to 20 per game. A lot for big games, you know, less for some of the routine URC games, but I think it's critically important for the Lions.
So just crystal balling this as we close out, 10 years from now, what does rugby look like? Where do you think it's headed? Maybe style of game. Is it more aerial? Is the ruck more streamlined? Are the laws finally abridged and turned into something right-sized? And then how big is the sport of rugby?
Hard question to answer, right? I mean, I have strong views and there's a lot to unpack there, because I think we got to tackle the rugby issue holistically. So it will require some rule changes to make the game a little faster. I still think refereeing is an issue. I mean, if you look what happened to Saracens this season, the Premiership, they would have been in the playoffs. In the game against Northampton, there were 2 clear forward passes. One was absolutely clear, okay? And the forward pass, you know, is a cornerstone rule of the game. We have to get that right.
Yeah, it's definitional about rugby.
Yeah, it's definitional about rugby. And so, you know, so there'll be tweaks, hopefully, that make the game a little bit more flowing and understandable to a new generation of fans. I think the game will be in Europe. You know, the South African teams playing there, but maybe a more streamlined European, fewer games, big franchise names, a mini league in the United States that's supported by the European League. But that's where, you know, just a little bit like soccer, that's where we got to be. And that's where we got to grow. Like, the World Rugby is trying to grow the game at the international level. It's just not gonna. We have to grow it bottom up. We have to deal with a club game, and I think it's going to happen because you've got a new generation and different type of owner involved in the sport now.
Awesome, Marco. Marco, we could sit here and talk all day. I'm sure we could. We will another time over some curry. But thank you so much for appearing on Lekker Rugby Pod. We love to have you on, and we'll have you on again as many times as you want to build your global brand. But cheers and thanks so much for the chat.
Thanks, Harry. Thanks for everything you're doing for the sport. Cheers.
It's the Lekker Rugby Pod, only on Megaphone Rugby.